They burned his barn at midnight. Flames lit up the Montana sky as the Mexican cartels sent their message. But they made one fatal mistake. They didn't check who owned the farm. Wade Thorne's hands didn't shake as he watched his life's work burn. They never shook. Not during 30 years of classified Delta Force missions. Not when he executed the most dangerous operations in military history. Not now. The cartel thought they found an easy target, a lonely old farmer to intimidate. Instead, they just woke up America's deadliest warrior, a man whose real resume is written in blood and buried in black files. Tonight, the hunters will become the hunted. The cartel is about to learn why Wade's military call sign was Phantom, the last thing you never see coming. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning frost crunched under Wade Thorne's boots as he walked his property line. Dawn was breaking over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. His German shepherd Atlas trotted beside him, alert and watchful, as always. At 65, Wade still moved with the fluid grace of a much younger man, his eyes constantly scanning his surroundings, old habits that had kept him alive through 3 decades of combat. "Something's not right, boy," Wade muttered, kneeling to examine fresh tire tracks in the mud. Atlas growled softly in agreement. The tracks were deep, made by heavy vehicles, and they weren't from any local trucks he recognized. Sarah Bennett, his closest neighbor, pulled up in her weathered pickup. "Wade, thank God you're out here. Did you hear about the Hendersons?" Wade straightened, brushing dirt from his jeans. "What about them?" "They're gone. Just packed up and left last night. No warning, nothing. But this morning, I saw men at their place, big black SUVs, guys who don't look like they're from around here. Cartel." Wade's voice was calm, but his mind was already racing through scenarios, analyzing threats, forming plans. Sarah nodded, her hands gripping her steering wheel tightly. "That's what they're saying in town. They've been moving up from the south, buying up properties. Those who don't sell, well, they find other ways to persuade them." Wade's jaw tightened. "Have they approached you yet?" "No, but Miller's place. Went last week. Same thing. Mysterious buyers, too much money to refuse. Those who stick around say they're using the farms for distribution routes." "Makes sense," Wade said, his tactical mind already mapping it out. Isolated properties, legitimate cover for vehicle traffic, storage facilities already in place. Sarah leaned out her window, lowering her voice. "Wade, these aren't ordinary criminals. They're organized, well-funded. The sheriff's out of his depth, and nobody else will stand up to them." Wade patted the side of her truck. "Don't worry about me, Sarah. I've dealt with worse. Just be careful. They're targeting this valley systematically. Won't be long before they come knocking on your door." As Sarah drove away, Wade whistled for Atlas and headed toward his barn. Inside, beneath the ordinary tools and farm equipment, lay a hidden cellar he'd installed when he first bought the property. Old paranoia, his friends had called it. Wade called it preparation. He lifted the false floorboard, revealing a cache of equipment he'd hoped never to use again. Military-grade communications gear, weapons, tactical gear, everything he'd need. If things went south, he'd spent his entire career planning for worst-case scenarios. This wouldn't be any different. Wade's phone buzzed, a text from an old contact in law enforcement. "Cartels moving hard and fast. 7 properties taken in the last month. Watch your back." He pocketed the phone and moved to his office, pulling out detailed maps of the valley. His property sat at a crucial junction, controlling the main road and overlooking 3 different approach routes. No wonder they wanted it. The sound of vehicles on the main road caught his attention. Through his window, he watched 3 black SUVs roll past his gate, moving slowly, too slowly. Reconnaissance, marking the next target. Atlas, Wade said, scratching his dog's ears, but they don't know who they're dealing with. He spent the rest of the morning making calls to old teammates, men who'd fought beside him in places that didn't officially exist, carrying out missions that would never see the light of day. "Knox, it's Phantom. Remember that favor you owe me? Time to pay up." "Wade, been a long time. How bad is it?" "Cartels moving into the valley, taking farms, setting up distribution networks. They'll be here soon." A low whistle from the other end. "Need some backup? Might not hurt to have the old team together again. One last mission." "You know we're not as young as we used to be, Wade." Wade smiled grimly. "Neither are they. Call the others. We've got work to do." By afternoon, his plans were in motion. 4 of his old team members were en route: Knox Raven Winters, their sniper; Cyrus Blast Alvarez, demo expert; Zane Ghost Voss, communication specialist; Nash Kestrel, their medic. Together they'd face down warlords, terrorists, and armies. A cartel wouldn't know what hit them. Wade walked his property again as the sun began to set. This time with different eyes. Not as a farmer, but as a battlefield commander. Every hill, every tree line, every approach, they could all be used. The cartel thought they were targeting an old man's farm. Instead, they were walking into a kill zone designed by one of the most experienced special operations commanders in history. Atlas barked suddenly, alerting Wade to more vehicles approaching. The same SUVs from earlier, this time stopping at his gate. Wade straightened his back, adjusted his worn baseball cap, and prepared to play the role of a simple farmer. Let them think he was harmless. Let them underestimate him. It was a mistake they would only make once. 5 men emerged from the SUVs, their expensive suits out of place against the rugged Montana landscape. Wade counted 2 more staying with. The vehicles, hands concealed beneath jackets. Atlas growled softly beside him, but a gentle touch from Wade kept him quiet. Felix Espectro Reyes led the group, his polished boots crunching on gravel as he approached. His smile was practiced, professional, but his eyes were cold as winter steel. "Mr. Thorne, beautiful property you have here." Felix extended his hand. Wade took it, noting the man's grip. Too firm, trying to establish dominance. Amateur's tactic. "What can I do for you, gentlemen?" Wade's voice was friendly, measured, playing the role of a simple farmer while his mind catalogued every detail. 2 men moving toward his barn, trying to be subtle about it. One by the gate with a radio. Military training, but sloppy. They'd grown too comfortable. "We represent an investment group," Felix said, gesturing to the valley. "We've been acquiring properties in the area, expanding operations, you might say. Your land, it has certain features that interest us." Wade leaned against his fence post, the picture of relaxation. Inside, he was marking fields of fire, cataloging weapons, noting their stances. Ex-military, at least 3 of them. The others were muscle, used to intimidating civilians. "Not interested." "In selling," Wade said simply. "Land's been in my family too long." Felix's smile tightened. "Perhaps I wasn't clear. We're prepared to offer significantly above market value, 3 million cash, more than generous for a ranch this size." Wade scratched Atlas behind the ears, buying time to observe the 2 men. By his barn, they were checking sightlines, defensive positions, not real estate investors, advanced team mapping the property for an assault. "Money's not everything," Wade replied. "Some things aren't for sale." The friendly facade cracked slightly. Felix stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Mr. Thorne, let me be direct. This valley is changing. Progress, you might say. You can be part of that change and profit from it, or... Wade's voice remained calm, even as he noted the subtle shift in the men's positions, surrounding him. Standard intimidation formation. Or you might find this valley becoming very unwelcoming. Accidents happen, especially to stubborn old men who don't know when to take a good deal." Wade straightened, slowly, allowing just a hint of steel to enter his voice. "Sounds like a threat, Mr. Reyes." Felix's eyes widened slightly at the use of his name, a name Wade shouldn't have known, a calculated slip to let them know he wasn't as ignorant as he appeared. Simply stating facts, Felix recovered quickly. The valley is changing. Fighting. It would be unwise. One of the men by the barn called out in Spanish, something about security cameras. Wade had let them spot the obvious ones, hiding his real surveillance system much more carefully. "Think about it," Felix said, producing a business card. "You have 24 hours. After that, the offer becomes significantly less generous." Wade took the card, noting the fake company name, Standard Cartel Front. "I'll sleep on it. See that you do." Felix turned to leave, then paused. "Beautiful dog. German Shepherd, yes? Would be a shame if something happened to him." Atlas growled, picking up on Wade's tension. Wade kept his hand gentle on the dog's head, but his voice carried the weight of 3 decades of combat experience. "That would be a very serious mistake." Something in his tone made Felix hesitate. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. For just a moment, the mask slipped, and Wade saw genuine surprise. They had expected an easy mark, a simple farmer they could bully or buy. Instead, they'd caught a glimpse of something else, something that set off warning bells. The cartel men retreated to their vehicles, trying to maintain their confident swagger. Wade watched them drive away, already planning his next moves. His phone buzzed, a text from Knox. 4 hours out, teams assembled. Wade typed back, "Make it 3, companies already knocking." Inside his house, Wade activated his real security system. Cameras hidden in trees covered every approach. Motion sensors monitored the perimeter. Everything fed into a command center he'd built in his basement, a holdover from years of planning for worst-case scenarios. He pulled up satellite images of the valley, marking known cartel properties. 7 farms taken in the last month, each one strategic. His land was the missing piece, controlling the main valley access point and providing clear lines of sight for miles. His phone rang again. Sarah, her voice tight with worry. "Wade, they were at your place, weren't they? I saw the SUVs. Just a friendly business proposition, Sarah. Nothing to worry about." "Don't lie to me." Miller tried to stand up to them. Next day, his barn burned down. Day after that, his wife's car crashed on a straight road. No witnesses. "Sarah, listen carefully. Next few days, stay with your sister in Missoula. Don't tell anyone you're going." "Wade, what are you planning?" "Better you don't know. Just trust me." After hanging up, Wade descended into his cellar. The hidden room was exactly as he'd left it, weapons and equipment maintained and ready. He began checking each piece methodically, muscle memory taking over as he field-stripped and reassembled rifles. Atlas whined softly from above. Wade paused, listening. Another vehicle approaching, different engine sound. He checked the cameras. Local sheriff's department, Deputy Mike Hayes, young and out of his depth but honest. Wade met him at the gate. Hayes looked nervous, shuffling his feet. "Mr. Thorne, heard you had visitors today. Word travels fast." "Listen, about the others. Miller, the Hendersons. We know what happened, but we can't prove anything. These people, they're connected. Evidence disappears. Witnesses change their stories." Wade nodded. "And you're here to advise me to take the deal?" Hayes looked ashamed. "They own half the valley already. Fighting them was it's suicide." "Appreciate the warning, Deputy, but I can handle myself." As Hayes drove away, Wade's phone chimed again. A message from Zane. "Intercepted their comms. Full. Assault planned. They're not waiting 24 hours. Wade smiled grimly. "Perfect. Let them come in force. Let them think they had the advantage." 3 decades of combat experience had taught him that overconfident enemies made mistakes, and he'd learned, long ago, how to turn those mistakes into opportunities. He had 3 hours until his team arrived. 3 hours to turn his farm into a fortress. The cartel thought they were dealing with a stubborn old man. By morning, they'd realize their mistake, but by then, it would be far too late. Atlas perked up his ears, sensing something beyond human. Perception. Through his security feeds, Wade watched 4 vehicles approaching from different directions, his team using old tactics to avoid being tracked. Knox's black pickup came first, followed by Cyrus in a weathered Jeep. Zane and Nash arrived minutes later, their vehicles covered in dust from back-road driving. Wade met them in the barn, away from prying eyes. 20 years melted away as his old team assembled, their movements still synchronized after all this time. Knox carried his custom rifle case like it was part of him. Cyrus brought enough explosives to level a small town, all carefully concealed, in construction equipment cases. Zane's communication gear looked civilian, but could crack military-grade encryption. Nash's medical kit was upgraded but familiar. He'd patched them up through worse situations than this. "Just like old times," Knox said, his voice gruff but warm, "though usually we had a government backing us up." "Government would just slow us down," Cyrus replied, already examining the barn's structure. "Nice setup, Wade. Good sight lines, multiple escape routes. You weren't kidding about being ready." Wade spread a detailed map across his workbench. "Cartel's been systematic, taking key properties, establishing distribution routes. They're not just running drugs, they're setting up a permanent operation." The team gathered around the map, falling naturally into their old roles. They weren't retired soldiers anymore. They were warriors again, preparing for one last battle to protect not just a farm, but an entire way of life. And when the cartel came, they'd learn why Wade's team had been the most feared unit in Delta Force history. Zane connected his laptop, bringing up intercepted communications. They're professional, ex-military in their ranks, mostly Mexican special forces, but they're arrogant, sloppy with their security, their mistake. "How many are we dealing with?" Nash observed, organizing his medical supplies. "Main force is 30 men. Wade pointed to marked locations. 2 separate groups. First team's the muscle. They handle intimidation, arson, accidents. Second team's their professionals, actual combat experience, proper tactical training. Knox examined the terrain through the barn door. Kill zone's perfect. Natural bottleneck here, high ground advantage. We can funnel them right where we want. Them. "They'll come in force," Wade warned. "No more pretense of being businessmen. They've got heavy weapons, armor, probably air support." "Good." Cyrus grinned, pulling out his demolition plans. "Been a while since we had a proper fight." "This isn't just about holding them off." Wade's voice turned serious. "We end this permanently. Not just here. We shut down their entire operation. In the valley." The team sobered, recognizing the tone. It was the voice that had led them through impossible missions, that had brought them all home alive when the odds said otherwise. "Why'd you really come?" Wade asked, looking at each man. "You could have stayed retired, stayed safe." Nash spoke first, his medical bag open beside him. "Remember Kosovo? That village we found after the militia went through? Some things you can't walk away from. Some fights need fighting. Cartel took my cousin's farm in Texas," Cyrus added, checking detonator wires. "By the time anyone could do anything, it was too late. Not happening again, not here." Knox just shrugged, but his eyes were hard. "You called. That's enough." Zane looked up from his computer. "They're moving faster than we thought." "Intercepted. Orders. Main force mobilizing for tonight. No warning, no negotiation. They're coming to take the farm and send a message." "Perfect." Wade smiled grimly. "Let's give them a message of their own." They spent the next hour fortifying key positions. Cyrus rigged the main road with explosives that could flip an armored vehicle. Knox set up 3 different sniper nests, each covering a different approach. Zane established a command center in Wade's basement, linking their communications and surveillance. "Remember Kandahar?" Knox asked as they worked. "That night raid, that went sideways when the whole city lit up," Cyrus chuckled. "Never saw so much firepower in my life." "Until Wade called an audible," Nash added. "Turned their own defenses against them." Still don't know how you knew that would work. Simple, Wade said, checking ammunition stores. People get predictable when they think they have the advantage. Cartels the same way. They're used to civilians, used to easy victories. They won't. Be ready for what's coming. Movement at the Henderson place. Zane's voice crackled over their earpieces. They're assembling their force. Thermal imaging shows at least 20 vehicles. They're not subtle anymore, Cyrus observed, finishing his last explosive trap. Coming in like an army. Good, Wade replied. Means they're scared. Scared men make mistakes. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the valley. Wade stood with his team on the porch, watching the day fade. They were no longer young men, but age had brought something else: experience, patience, the kind of wisdom that only comes from decades of combat. Knox, I want you in the North Tower. Best sightlines, and they won't expect anyone up there. Cyrus, rig the barn for remote detonation. Make it look like a tempting target. Zane, keep monitoring their comms. The moment they split their forces, we take advantage. Nash Medical Station in the basement, but be ready to move. This gets hot, we'll need you mobile. Each man nodded, understanding their roles without need for further explanation. This wasn't their first impossible mission, just maybe their last. One more thing, Wade added, his voice carrying the weight of command. We're not just defending a farm. We're defending every family in this valley, every person these bastards would victimize. We do this right. We do it clean. And we do it permanent. As his team moved to their positions, Wade checked his weapons one final time. Atlas sat beside him, alert and ready. In the distance he could see dust clouds rising, the cartel's forces assembling. They thought they were preparing to raid an old man's farm. Instead, they were walking into a trap laid by some of the most experienced combat veterans alive. The radio crackled. Zane's voice was tight. First wave moving out. ETA 20 minutes. Copy that, Wade replied, signaling to his team. Remember, let them get comfortable. Let them think they have the advantage. Then we show them what real soldiers can do. The Montana sun disappeared behind the mountains, plunging the valley into darkness. But darkness had always been their ally. In the shadows, Wade Thorne wasn't a farmer anymore. He was Phantom again, the ghost that hunted other ghosts. And he was about to remind the cartel why that name had once struck fear into the hearts of far more dangerous men than them. Moonlight silvered the Montana landscape as Wade watched the cartel convoy approach through his night vision scope. 20 vehicles moving in formation. Someone had trained them well. Too bad they'd forgotten the first rule of combat. Never fight on ground your enemy has prepared. They're splitting up, Zane's voice crackled through the comms. 3 teams, main force coming up the central road, 2 flanking units trying to circle wide. Knox's voice was cold and professional from his sniper's nest. Got eyes on the lead. Vehicle. Officer types in the back seat. Want me to take the shot? Negative, Wade replied. Let them get comfortable. Spring the trap on my mark. The convoy's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the road to Wade's farm. They moved with confidence, no attempt at stealth. Why bother? They thought they were hunting an old man. Contact in 2 minutes, Cyrus reported. Charges are set. These boys are in for a surprise. Wade watched through his scope as the first vehicles reached his outer perimeter. The cartel soldiers emerged with military precision, weapons ready, moving in practiced formations. Spread out, Felix ordered in Spanish. I want this place surrounded. No one gets out alive. They're deploying heavy weapons, Zane warned. 50 cals on the trucks, RPGs in the second wave. Wade's voice remained calm. Stick to the plan. The cartel forces advanced steadily, moving past the first line of Wade's defenses without noticing them. 50 meters, 40, 30, they were almost in position. Sir, one of Felix's men called out. No! Movement in the house, thermal showing nothing. Felix grabbed his radio. Check the barn, he has to be here somewhere. 3 cartel soldiers approached the barn, weapons ready. Wade watched them through his scope, counting down in his head. This was the moment that would set the tone. The night was still, pregnant with violence. In their positions, each member of Wade's team waited with the patience of seasoned predators. They'd been in this position countless times before, in jungles, deserts, and mountains across the world. The location changed, but the dance remained the same. Through his thermal scope, Wade could see more vehicles arriving at the cartel's staging area. They were committing significant forces, at least 40 men. They'd come prepared for resistance, but not the kind they were about to face. Atlas lay silently beside Wade, the dog's muscles tense but controlled. Like his master, he was waiting for the perfect moment. In the command center, Zane monitored communications, tracking the cartel's movements through their own radio traffic. Nash checked his medical supplies one final time while Cyrus's finger hovered near his detonator. "Remember," Wade's voice whispered through their comms, "we're not just fighting for a farm. We're fighting for every family they've terrorized, every home they've stolen. Make it count." The cartel forces had no idea they were already surrounded, already caught in a web laid by masters of asymmetric warfare. They were using standard military tactics against men who had written the book on unconventional combat. In the distance, Felix raised his hand, about to give the signal for the final advance. The moment of peace stretched thin, like a guitar string about to snap. Wade's voice was barely a whisper. "Now! Now!" Wade commanded. Cyrus detonated his first series of charges. The ground erupted beneath the lead vehicles, sending them airborne in a shower of dirt and metal. Before the dust settled, Knox opened fire from his hidden position. 2 cartel. Soldiers dropped before they realized they were under attack. "What the hell?" Felix shouted, diving for cover. "Where's the fire coming from?" The night exploded into chaos. Wade's team had prepared kill zones throughout the property, and now they put them to use. Every time the cartel forces tried to rally, they found themselves caught in interlocking fields of fire. 3 trying to flank east, Knox reported calmly, his rifle cracking in the darkness. "Got them," Cyrus responded with a series of explosions that drove the flanking team right into Nash's line of fire. Wade moved like a ghost through the darkness, years of combat experience guiding every step. He caught 2 cartel soldiers by surprise, disarming one and using him as a shield against the other's fire. Both went down without a sound. "Who are these guys?" a cartel soldier screamed over their radio. "This isn't right. They're too organized." Felix's voice cut through the chaos. "They're professionals. Fall back to the vehicles. Reform defensive. Positions!" "Too late," Wade whispered, triggering another set of charges. The explosions cut off their retreat, trapping the cartel forces in the kill zone. Knox's rifle spoke again. "Technical at your 3 o'clock, Wade. Gunner down, but driver's still up." Wade rolled behind a tractor as 50 caliber rounds tore through the air where he'd been standing. The technical's driver was good, keeping the vehicle moving to avoid return fire, but he'd forgotten to watch his flanks. "Cyrus!" Wade called. "Time to use that toy you brought." A rocket streaked through the darkness, striking the technical's engine block. The vehicle flipped, cartwheeling off the road in a ball of flame. "Damn, I missed that," Cyrus laughed. "Just like Damascus." "Stay focused," Wade ordered. "They're regrouping." Felix had managed to rally his remaining men behind the wreckage of their vehicles. They had training, Wade gave them that. Even caught by surprise, they were adapting quickly. "Zane, what's their strength?" Wade asked, moving to a new position. 18, still combat effective. They're calling for reinforcements. Second wave is 30 minutes out. "They won't last that long," Knox stated flatly, his rifle ending another cartel soldier's attempt to flank their position. Wade watched Felix directing his men, noting their movements. They were trying to establish a base of fire, create space, for their reinforcements to arrive. Standard military doctrine. "Time to show them why standard responses get you killed," Wade said. "Cyrus, hit their rally point. Knox, watch for runners. Nash, be ready." Some of them are about to need medical attention. Multiple explosions ripped through the cartel's position. Wade moved through the chaos like a wraith, his suppressed rifle ending threats before they could materialize. 2 decades of fighting had taught him the value of economy of motion. No wasted movements, no hesitation. "Contact front," a cartel soldier screamed. "He's inside our perimeter." Wade's reply was swift and silent. 3 more went down before they could turn to face him. Felix was shouting orders, trying to organize. A defense against an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. "Who are you?" Felix screamed into the darkness. "What kind of farmer fights like this?" "The kind you shouldn't have threatened," Wade replied, his voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. The cartel's first assault was falling apart. What had started as a confident attack had turned into a desperate struggle for survival. Of the original 20 vehicles, 8 were burning. Of the 40 men Felix had brought, less than half were still fighting. "Pull back," Felix ordered. "Full retreat. Get back to the rally point." "I don't think so," Wade said calmly. Knox's sniper. Rifle cracked 3 times. The remaining vehicle's tires exploded, stranding them in the kill zone. "El Fantasma is going to kill us all," Felix muttered, realizing the trap they were in. "El Fantasma should have done his homework," Wade replied, stepping out of the shadows, behind Felix. "Should have asked why no one had ever successfully attacked this farm." Felix spun, raising his weapon, but he was too slow. Wade's strike was precise, efficient. The cartel leader dropped unconscious as his remaining men surrendered. "Area secure," Knox reported. "No runners. Nash, we've got wounded." "Zip tie them," Wade directed. "Nash, stabilize them." "Zane, what's the status on their reinforcements?" "Still inbound. 20 minutes out. Bigger force this time. Looks like they're bringing everything they have." Wade nodded, securing Felix's unconscious form. "Good. Let them come. First wave was just to remind us of what we can do. Next wave is where we show them who we really are." The team gathered briefly, checking weapons and reloading. The night was still young, and this was just the beginning. The real battle was still to come, but now they were warmed up, synchronized, ready. "Just like old times," Nash said, treating a wounded cartel soldier. "Better," Wade replied, checking his ammunition. "This time we're fighting on our terms, on our ground, and this time we're finishing it for good." The aftermath of the first battle left Wade's farm eerily quiet. Burning vehicles cast orange glows across the Montana night, while zip-tied cartel soldiers sat under Nash's watchful eye. Felix was starting to stir, his face showing the dawning realization of just how badly they'd miscalculated. 16 prisoners, Nash reported, finishing another field dressing. 3 critical but stable rest are walking wounded. Wade knelt beside Felix, who glared up at him with a mixture of fear and defiance. "Now then," Wade said quietly, "let's talk about El Fantasma." "Go to hell," Felix spat, then switched to Spanish, cursing. "Your choice," Wade replied in perfect Spanish, shocking Felix into silence. "But your reinforcements are coming into my kill zone in less than 15 minutes. Would be a shame if they made the same mistakes you did." Zane approached, laptop in hand. Intercepted their communications. "El Fantasma is coming personally. He's pissed, bringing in heavy weapons, professional contractors. This isn't going to be like the first wave." Felix laughed, a harsh sound. "You're all dead. El Fantasma doesn't leave witnesses. He'll burn this whole valley to get to you." "How many?" Wade asked calmly. "Enough to kill you 10 times over. Former Mexican Special Forces, Colombian mercenaries, cartel's best killers." Wade cut him off. "I meant, how many families have you terrorized? How many farms have you taken? How many accidents have you arranged?" The question caught Felix off guard. For just a moment his arrogance cracked, showing uncertainty beneath. "Knox," Wade called, "what do you see?" The sniper's voice crackled over their comms. "Multiple vehicles, different approach vectors. They're being smart this time. Thermal. Shows at least 40 troops, maybe more. Multiple heavy weapons teams. They're spreading out. Won't fall for the same trap twice, Cyrus added. Wade turned back to Felix. Last chance. Help us end this with minimal bloodshed, or watch more of. Your men die needlessly. You don't understand what you're dealing with, Felix said, his voice dropping. El Fantasma, he's different. He enjoys the violence, the killing. You should run while you can. Already met men like him, Wade replied, standing, in places much worse than this. They're all the same in the end. First elements reaching. The outer perimeter, Zane reported through static-filled comms. They're moving slower, checking for traps. Wade moved to his team, their faces illuminated by burning wreckage. They'll come from multiple directions this time, looking to overwhelm us with numbers and firepower. Knox, I want you mobile. Change positions after every few shots. Cyrus, time for the secondary charges. Zane, keep their comms scrambled. Nash? The medic nodded toward the prisoners. Keep them secure, keep them alive, Wade added. Remember, they're expecting us to be tired, maybe wounded. They think the first fight cost us. Let them think that. Let them get overconfident. A new voice. Cut through their radio frequencies. Deep, commanding, speaking Spanish with a Sinaloa accent. El Fantasma himself directing his forces. Found their command channel, Zane reported. Want me to jam it? No. Wade smiled grimly. Let them talk. Fear works better when they can share it. The team split up, moving to predetermined positions. Years of working together meant they barely needed words anymore. Each man knew his role, trusted the others to play theirs. Contact in 2 minutes, Knox reported. Got eyes on their command. Element, El Fantasmas in the black Suburban. 3 vehicles back, heavily guarded. Cyrus, Wade directed, give them something to think about. A series of explosions ripped through the night, not aimed at the cartel forces but illuminating the battlefield. In the sudden light, they could see what they were walking into. Defensive positions covering every approach, kill zones arranged with mathematical precision. Mother of God, one of the cartel soldiers whispered over their open channel. The whole property's fortified. Keep advancing, El Fantasma's voice commanded. They're just trying to scare us. Press the attack. Wade's voice cut into their frequency, speaking calm Spanish. 43 minutes ago, I had twice your number in. Body bags or zip ties. That was when I was being gentle. Last warning, withdraw or meet the same fate. The cartel forces hesitated, their advance faltering. El Fantasma's response was immediate and brutal. He shot one of his own men who had stopped moving. The next, one who shows cowardice dies by my hand, he roared. Forward, kill them all. Well, Wade sighed, switching back to his team's channel. Can't say we didn't try. Cyrus, got something special for them? The demo expert replied, remember that trick we used in Fallujah? Do it. The night erupted in carefully orchestrated chaos. Explosions chain-reacted across the battlefield, but these weren't meant to kill. They were precise, tactical, cutting off escape routes, separating units from each other, creating confusion and panic. They're spread too thin, Knox reported, his rifle cracking methodically, taking targets of opportunity. Wade moved through, the darkness like a ghost, his movements calculated and precise. 2 cartel soldiers never saw him coming. One moment they were advancing, the next they were unconscious. Who are you people? El Fantasma's voice roared over the radio. Wade's response was cold and precise. You wanted this farm so badly. Welcome. To it. Let me show you why they used to call me Phantom. They're setting up mortars on the ridge, Knox warned. The situation was escalating beyond what anyone had anticipated. El Fantasma bringing in weapons that could reduce Wade's farm to rubble. Status report, Wade demanded, moving between defensive positions. 5 handlers wounded, 2 critical, Nash responded. Dogs are still operational, but the medical building won't survive a direct hit. Through his night vision optic, Wade spotted El Fantasma's command post. The cartel leader stood surrounded by his lieutenants, his posture showing growing frustration. This assault was supposed to be a demonstration of power. Instead, it was becoming an embarrassment. "All units prepare for Protocol Omega," Wade broadcast. "They're done testing us. The real fight starts now." Around him, Wade's defenders readied themselves for what was coming. Each man checked their equipment while maintaining alert positions. These weren't just old soldiers playing at war. They were seasoned warriors, about to remind the cartel why they'd been feared across the globe. The night sky lit up as the first mortar rounds arced toward the facility. El Fantasma had decided to reduce Wade's farm to ash, but he was about to learn why Delta operators were considered among the most lethal warriors in history. "Remember," Wade told his team, "we're not just defending dirt and buildings. We're protecting everyone these bastards have terrorized, every family they've threatened, every home they've stolen. Make it personal, make it count." Through the darkness, Atlas growled low in his throat, sensing the approaching storm. Wade patted his faithful companion's head. "Ready, boy. Let's show them why you don't threaten a Delta operator's home." In the distance, El Fantasma's forces moved into their final assault positions. They had the numbers, the weapons, the tactical training, but they were about to learn that some old soldiers never lose their edge, and tonight the hunters were about to become the hunted. The first mortar rounds impacted with devastating force, but not where El Fantasma intended. Wade's outer buildings, designed as expendable shells, absorbed the initial barrage while the facility's true defensive positions remained intact underground. "Status." "Report," Amanda called through the command net, her voice steady despite the explosions rocking the compound. "Medical team secure in Bunker 2, Rachel responded. "All wounded stabilized. Dogs are maintaining discipline under fire." Through reinforced observation ports, Wade watched the cartel's mortar teams adjusting their fire. Their technique was professional. Military-trained mercenaries earning their pay, but they were about to learn why Wade's reputation was earned through more than just combat. "Execute Operation Blackout," he ordered. "All handlers prepare for night warfare protocols." The facility's remaining exterior lights cut out simultaneously. In the sudden darkness, Wade's team held the advantage. Every man had trained extensively for zero-light operations. "Multiple teams moving through the East Breach," Kevin reported from his position. "They think we're blind," Wade allowed himself a grim smile. "Show them their mistake." Knox's rifle cracked from a new position, his shots precise and devastating. 3 cartel soldiers dropped before their teammates could react. "They're pushing the western approach now. These aren't cartel thugs. They move like special forces." "Pattern Delta," Wade commanded. "Let's show them what real special forces can do." The night erupted in controlled violence. Wade's team moved like ghosts through their prepared positions, striking without warning, disappearing before the cartel forces could respond. Years of combat experience turned the darkness into their ally. "Contact front," a cartel soldier shouted in Spanish, his voice cracking with panic. "They're everywhere." El Fantasma's voice boomed across the battlefield. "Push forward. There are only 5 men. We have the numbers." "Numbers don't mean much against ghosts," Wade's voice cut through their command channel. "How many men are you willing to lose tonight?" A burst of automatic fire answered him. Wade didn't flinch. He'd already moved from that position, anticipating the response. 2 more cartel soldiers went down to precise shots from his suppressed rifle. "West sector's getting heavy," Nash reported. "They're making a serious push." "That's their feint," Wade replied. "Knox, watch the east. That's where their real attack's coming." Sure enough, while one team pushed aggressively from the west, their best operators were moving quietly through the eastern approach. It was a solid tactic, one that would have worked against most opponents. "Count 12, Knox said quietly. "Elite team moving like professionals. These are their best." "Good," Wade replied. "Cyrus, Nash, shift east. Knox, hold your fire until my mark. Let's show them what real professionals can do." The elite cartel team moved with impressive skill, using every bit of cover, maintaining perfect spacing. They were halfway to their objective when Wade sprung his trap. Cyrus's charges illuminated the night, not damaging but disorienting. Before the cartel operators could adjust their night vision, Knox opened fire from his elevated position. Every shot found its mark, not killing, but disabling, taking out knees and shoulders with surgical precision. "Clear them up," Wade ordered, and Nash moved in with swift efficiency, securing the wounded operators. El Fantasma's voice was tight, with barely controlled rage. "Who are you people?" "You really should have done your research," Wade replied calmly. "Asked around about who owned this farm, about why no one had ever successfully attacked it." A new sound cut through the night. Helicopter rotors. "Boss, they're bringing in air support," Zane warned. "Right on schedule," Wade smiled. "Cyrus?" "Oh yeah, got something special for choppers. Just say when." The helicopter swept in low, its spotlight cutting through the darkness. The door gunner opened up with a minigun, stitching a line of destruction across Wade's property. But the team had prepared for this too. "Now," Wade commanded. The night was about to show El Fantasma why you don't bring a cartel army against Delta Force operators. Not if you want that army to survive the night. Cyrus triggered a specialized charge, not an explosion, but a massive flashbang, designed specifically for aircraft. The helicopter pilot, momentarily blinded, yanked the stick back. The sudden move threw off the gunner's aim. Knox's rifle cracked. Once, the spotlight exploded, plunging the helicopter back into darkness. Two more precise shots disabled the minigun. "You can land safely," Wade broadcast to the pilot, "or you can crash. Your choice." The helicopter retreated, its pilot choosing wisdom over valor. On the ground, El Fantasma was shouting orders with increasing desperation. His elite team was down, his air support driven off, and his men were losing cohesion. "How many more men are you willing to sacrifice?" Wade asked over their channel. "How many bodies before you realize you've made a mistake?" The response was immediate, a massive barrage of automatic weapons fire, but Wade had already moved, ghosting through the darkness to a new position. 20 years ago they'd called him Phantom because he could appear anywhere, strike without warning, vanish, before the enemy could respond. Tonight he was reminding them why. "East sector compromised," a handler reported. "They've breached the inner fence." "Release pattern Delta," Wade responded. "All K9 units activate." What happened next demonstrated why Delta operators were considered among the most lethal forces on Earth. The facility's underground network, far more extensive than the cartel realized, allowed defenders to emerge from multiple hidden positions simultaneously. "Contact East," a cartel soldier shouted, his panic clear. "The dogs are everywhere." Through his command scope, Wade watched the chaos unfold. The cartel team's professional discipline began to crack as they faced an enemy they couldn't effectively target. His team wasn't just attacking. They were implementing complex tactical maneuvers designed to split and isolate enemy forces. "They're falling back to secondary positions," Jason reported. "But El Fantasma is pushing them forward." The cartel leader's frustration was visible even at this distance. He'd committed too many resources, lost too much face to retreat now. But his aggressive push was exactly what Wade had been waiting for. "Execute Pattern Lambda," he ordered. "Show them why we built this facility the way we did." Pattern Lambda transformed Wade's seemingly simple farmland into a tactical maze. Hidden barriers rose from concealed positions, channeling cartel forces into predetermined zones of control. Each area became a separate battle space where Wade's team held every advantage. "Multiple tangos trapped in Sector 7, a team member reported. "Knox and Cyrus have them contained." Wade moved through the underground passages, his movements precise and economical. Even El Fantasma's best operators were falling into carefully prepared traps. their military training working against them as they followed standard protocols that Wade's team had anticipated. "Sir," Zane called urgently, "they're bringing up something big. Thermal shows armored vehicles with heavy weapons." "Good," Wade replied. "Time to show them why you don't bring armor against Delta operators who've had time to prepare." The night filled with the sound of controlled chaos as Wade's team pressed their advantage. Each explosion, each shot, each movement was calculated to create maximum psychological impact. The cartel forces were learning the hard way that they weren't fighting farmers. They were up against men who had spent decades perfecting the art of asymmetric warfare. "El Fantasma's losing control of his men," Knox reported. "They're starting to break formation, looking for ways out." "Keep the pressure on," Wade commanded. "Don't let them regroup. Show them why military dogs are different from attack dogs." Through the facility's advanced surveillance system, Wade spotted El Fantasma conferring urgently with his remaining officers. The cartel leader's body language showed growing frustration as another coordinated attack fell apart against Wade's defenses. "Remember," Wade broadcast to his team, "we're not just fighting for a farm. We're fighting for every family these bastards have terrorized. Make each shot count. Make them remember why Delta Force earned its reputation." In the darkness, Atlas moved like a shadow beside him, both of them hunters in their element. The cartel had brought an army to take a farm. Instead, they were about to learn why some old soldiers never really retire. They just wait for the right moment to remind the world why they were feared in the first place. El Fantasma's response came with cold fury. "Burn everything," he ordered in Spanish, his voice carrying across the battlefield. "Burn it all to the ground." His men deployed incendiary weapons, trying to deny Wade's team their carefully prepared positions. The night lit up with phosphorus and thermite, turning the battlefield into a hellscape of fire and smoke. "They're getting desperate," Knox observed, relocating as flames consumed his previous sniper nest. "Making mistakes." "Careful," Wade warned. "Desperate men are unpredictable." "Zane, what are you seeing?" "They're splitting into 3 groups, main force still pushing center, but they're deploying their best units wide, trying to flank through the burning zones." A massive explosion rocked the farmhouse as the cartel deployed satchel charges against the outer walls. The reinforced structure held, but the message was clear. They were done probing and ready to destroy everything. "Sir," Nash called out, "we've got wounded to evacuate. These fires are getting too close to the holding area." Wade processed the tactical situation in seconds. "Knox, cover the east approach. Cyrus, buy us some time. Everyone else fall back to position 3. We're not losing anyone tonight." Cyrus's voice was grim. "Got something special saved for this. Might want to cover your eyes." Multiple explosions chained across the property, but these were different, magnesium bright, creating walls of light that temporarily blinded anyone looking in their direction. In the confusion, Wade's team executed a fighting withdrawal, moving their prisoners and wounded to a fortified storm cellar they'd prepared for exactly this scenario. "They're pushing hard on the west side," Knox reported, his rifle cracking steadily. "These guys are different. Cartel's elite death squad. I recognize their tactics from the briefings." "Los Fantasmas," Wade confirmed. El Fantasma's personal kill team, ex-Mexican special forces who went rogue. "They're good." "Not good enough," Knox replied, punctuating his words with precise shots. The death squad moved with fluid grace, using the fires as cover. They were well equipped. Thermal imaging, advanced body armor, military-grade weapons. These weren't cartel thugs. These were professional killers. "Contact!" Zane shouted. 3 death squad members had breached the inner perimeter, moving with lethal precision toward the command center. Wade moved to intercept, but they had him pinned with well-coordinated fire. "Little help here," Wade called out, surprisingly calm despite the bullets cutting through the air around him. "Working on it," Cyrus replied. The ground erupted beneath. The death squad, not with explosives, but with compressed air and dirt. a non-lethal but disorienting blast that broke their formation. Wade capitalized instantly, closing the distance. The fight was brief, but brutal. The Death Squad members were excellent shots, but Wade had spent decades mastering close-quarter combat. The first went down to a throat strike-knife disarm combination. The second managed to land a solid hit before Wade's elbow strike found the sweet spot behind his ear. The third proved tougher, clearly their hand-to-hand specialist. "Impressive," the man said in accented English, squaring up with the fighters. "Stance, but you're still just an old man." Wade's response was a lightning-fast combination that ended with the specialist unconscious on the ground. "Age and treachery, kid." "We've got a problem," Zane cut in. "They're bringing up something big. Thermals showing. Oh hell, they've got a technical with a heavy autocannon." The sound of the 20mm cannon split the night, its rounds powerful enough to punch through Wade's reinforced walls. This wasn't about taking the farm anymore. This was about complete destruction. "Knox, can you get a shot?" "Negative, they've got it too well protected." "Need a new angle," Wade thought fast. The cannon was devastating, but it had weaknesses. "Cyrus, remember Serbia? That arms depot, the one with the tanks." "Yeah, that was... Oh, I like where this is going. Can you do it?" "Just like old times." "Hey boss, give me 2 minutes." El Fantasma's voice boomed across their comms. "You see, this is what happens to those who resist. We will reduce this place to ash." Wade smiled grimly. The cartel leader had just made his biggest mistake. He'd gotten predictable, and in combat predictability was deadly. "That's an impressive gun." Wade's voice cut through their frequency. "Russian-made, probably stolen from a military depot. Very effective against buildings, not so great against what's coming." "You're finished," El Fantasma shouted. "Your defenses are breaking. Look around you." "Look to your left," Wade replied calmly. The cartel boss did, just in time to see Cyrus's surprise. The old barn, which they thought was just burning, suddenly revealed its secret. The entire structure had been rigged as a massive directional blast, focusing its force right at the technical. The explosion wasn't meant to destroy. That would have been too dangerous. Instead, it created a massive pressure wave that overturned the vehicle, rendering the cannon useless and sending El Fantasma's men scrambling for cover. "That was our excuse to keep things civil," Wade announced. "Push any harder and we stop. Being nice, kill them all!" El Fantasma screamed, but there was an edge of fear in his voice now. His men were dying or surrendering, his best units were down, and his heavy weapons were being systematically eliminated. "Boss," Nash called out, "got movement in the tree line. Looks like they're bringing up their reserve force." "Good," Wade replied. "About time they committed everything. Knox, you know what to do." The sniper's rifle began its deadly work, not killing but methodically disabling vehicles, weapons, and equipment. Each shot was calculated to reduce the cartel's options, to force them into predictable responses. "They're pulling back," Zane reported. "Regrouping around their command vehicle." Wade checked his ammunition, noting the fires still burning across his property. The farm was damaged but not destroyed, his team tired but not beaten, and El Fantasma had just made his biggest mistake, consolidating his forces into one location. "All units," Wade commanded, "prepare for final phase. Remember, we're not just defending anymore. Time to show them why you don't bring a cartel to a Delta Force fight." Through facility cameras, Wade watched El Fantasma directing his remaining forces with growing desperation. His reputation was on the line now. He couldn't afford to be defeated by what he dismissed as a simple training facility. "Got 3. More technicals moving up," Knox reported. "They're trying to establish a fire base at the north end. Cyrus, show them our opinion of that plan." A series of precisely placed charges detonated, not to kill, but to channel. The cartel vehicles found themselves herded into a crossfire zone that Wade's team had prepared hours ago. In seconds, their engines were disabled, their weapons knocked out, their crews diving for cover. "They're breaking formation on the east side," Zane called out. "Lost unit cohesion, starting to fight as individuals." This was what Wade had been waiting for. When professional forces lost their coordination, they became more dangerous, but also more predictable. Every man for himself meant no more tactical planning, no more coordinated responses. "Execute Omega Protocol," Wade ordered. "All units activate your sectors." What happened next demonstrated why Delta Force operators were considered among the military's elite. Wade's team moved like ghosts through their prepared positions, each man multiplying his effectiveness through years of experience and perfect coordination. They didn't target the cartel forces directly. Instead, they systematically eliminated every piece of cover, every fallback position, every rally point. "Who are these people?" a cartel soldier screamed over their open frequency. "They're everywhere. They know every move before we make it." El Fantasma's voice had lost its confidence, now showing the strain of command falling apart. "Hold your positions. Anyone who runs dies by my hand." "Your men aren't the problem," Wade broadcast calmly. "Your planning is? Never commit your forces without knowing your enemy's full capabilities. Basic tactics, but I guess they don't teach that in cartel school." Through his thermal scope, Wade watched the cartel's formations crumbling. Their professional operators were trying to maintain order, but the regular forces were starting to break. Veer was doing what bullets couldn't, destroying their will to fight. "Sir," Nash reported, "we've got multiple surrenders on the west side. They're throwing down weapons." "Process them," Wade ordered. "Knox, maintain overwatch. Cyrus, prep the final sequence. Time to end this." El Fantasma stood in his command position, watching his assault fall apart, his carefully planned operation disintegrating in the face of superior experience and preparation. He'd brought an army to take a farm, only to find himself facing opponents who had spent decades perfecting the art of asymmetric warfare. Wade's voice carried across the battlefield one final time. "Last chance, El Fantasma. Surrender now, or we show you why Delta Force missions don't appear in history books." El Fantasma's response came with the fury of a man watching his empire crumble. "Burn everything," he roared in Spanish. "Use the incendiary weapons. If we can't have this valley, no one will." His remaining forces deployed white phosphorus grenades and thermite charges, trying to turn Wade's farm into an inferno. The night sky glowed orange as flames spread across the battlefield. "Sir," Nash called urgently, "fire's getting close to the ammunition cache in Sector 4. "Time to show them our final surprise," Wade replied. "Cyrus, initiate flood protocol. Hidden sprinkler systems activated across the property, but they weren't spraying water." A special fire-retardant foam, developed for military bases, began smothering the incendiary weapons. El Fantasma's last gambit died in clouds of suppressing chemicals. "They're trying to flank through the smoke," Knox reported. "Two teams looking professional, probably their last Special Forces units." "Let them come," Wade ordered. "Execute pattern echo." The cartel forces moved with tactical precision through the chemical fog, using it for cover. But Wade's team had trained for exactly this scenario. Thermal imaging, coupled with pre-sighted firing positions, turned their careful advance into a killing field. "Contact front," a cartel operator shouted. "They're using our smoke against us." El Fantasma's voice cracked with desperation. "Push through. They can't cover every angle." "Actually," Wade's voice cut through their comms, "that's exactly what we can do. Now, Cyrus." Industrial fans, hidden in the barn's remains, roared to life, clearing the smoke in seconds. The cartel forces found themselves exposed, caught in interlocking fields of fire with nowhere to hide. "West Group surrendering," Zane reported. "East Group, They're breaking for the vehicles. Knocks, 3 precise shots rang out. The escape vehicle's engines died with mechanical screams. They're not going anywhere, the sniper confirmed. El Fantasma stood in his command position, watching, his force disintegrate. 30 years of cartel operations, and he'd never faced anything like this. These weren't soldiers following a playbook. These were masters of warfare, turning every cartel tactic against them. Time to end this, Wade commanded. All units, execute a mega strike. What followed was a masterclass in coordinated military action. Wade's team moved like wraiths through their prepared positions, each man's decades of experience showing in every motion. They didn't just attack, they controlled the battlefield completely. "Who are you people?" El Fantasma demanded over the comms. "We're the reason people like you don't sleep at night," Wade replied. "The ghost stories they tell in special forces bars, the missions that never made it to paper, and you just made us very, very angry." The cartel leader's security detail, his last elite guards, formed a defensive circle around him. They were good. Mexican Special Forces veterans, all of them, but they were facing men who had helped write the books those forces trained from. Multiple targets, closing in on the command post, Knox reported. El Fantasma's bringing everything. He has left for a final stand. "Perfect," Wade replied. "Cyrus, light it up." The ground around El Fantasma's position erupted in a carefully choreographed sequence of explosions. Not to kill, that would have been too easy. Instead, they created a corridor, herding the cartel forces exactly where Wade wanted them. "You cannot win!" El Fantasma shouted, but his voice held more desperation than conviction now. "We have an entire cartel, armies, you're just 5 old men." "No." Wade's voice came from everywhere and nowhere as his team closed in. "We're Delta Force, and you just gave us time to prepare." The final confrontation was brutally efficient. Wade's team moved in perfect coordination, decades of shared combat experience evident in every action. El Fantasma's remaining guards went down to precise shots and tactical strikes, each one carefully calculated to disable rather than kill. The cartel leader stood alone now, his empire in ruins around him. His last weapon came up, a military-grade grenade launcher. "Die!" he screamed, pulling the trigger, but Wade was already moving. Years of combat instinct guided his hand. The launcher flew from El Fantasma's grip, its round discharging harmlessly into the sky. The cartel leader found himself on his knees, arms locked behind him. Decades of Delta Force close combat training evident in the clinical precision of his takedown. "Told you you should have checked who owned this farm," Wade said quietly. Around them, the last pockets of resistance surrendered as dawn's first light began painting the Montana sky. El Fantasma's invasion force lay broken, his careful plans shattered against the rock of experience and preparation. The cartel had brought an army to take a farm. Instead, they'd learned why some old soldiers are best left alone. Dawn broke over Wade's farm, revealing the full extent of the night's battle. State police vehicles surrounded the property while FBI tactical teams secured the perimeter. Inside the command center, Wade supervised the handover of their high-value prisoner. El Fantasma, real name Salvador Torres, Agent Julia Martinez read from her tablet. Former Mexican Special Forces turned cartel commander, wanted in connection with over 30 murders. "This is a major capture," Wade watched through reinforced windows as a line of captured cartel soldiers was processed and loaded into transport vehicles. Knox and Cyrus maintained overwatch positions, their weapons ready. Even in victory, old habits died hard. "Final count," Wade asked Zane, who was coordinating with the federal response teams. 38 captured, including El Fantasma's entire command staff, 22 wounded, all stable thanks to Nash's work, no fatalities. Zane's lips twitched. "Guess we haven't lost our touch." Agent Martinez studied the battlefield through professional eyes. "This is impressive. We've been after El Fantasma for years. He's never made a mistake like this, never committed so many resources to one operation. Pride, Wade said simply. He thought he was hitting a soft target. By the time he realized his mistake, his ego wouldn't let him back down. The sun climbed higher, illuminating the sophisticated network of defensive positions and kill zones that had transformed Wade's farm into a fortress. FBI evidence teams photographed disabled vehicles and collected shell casings, documenting the precision of the night's operation. "Sir," Knox called from his position, "got movement on the southern approach. Looks like media vehicles. Zane, make sure they stay clear. This stays quiet." Wade turned to Agent Martinez. "I'm sure you understand. Some stories are better left untold." She nodded, professional enough to recognize the implications. "Officially, this will be recorded as a joint FBI state police operation that interrupted a cartel incursion. No mention of independent contractors." Through the command center's windows, Wade watched Nash treating the wounded cartel soldiers. Even their enemies received professional medical care, another mark of the difference between soldiers and criminals. "Your men are impressive," El Fantasma spoke from his secured position, watched by federal agents. "Professional, disciplined, they fight with honor, even against those who deserve none." "That's the difference between us," Wade replied. "We don't fight for money or power, we fight for something bigger." Sarah's truck appeared at the outer perimeter, escorted by state police. Wade met her at the gate, where she stared wide-eyed. "At the aftermath of battle, my God, Wade, when you said you could handle yourself," she looked at the line of captured cartel soldiers. "Who are you people?" "Just some old soldiers who remembered their training." He squeezed her shoulder. "The valley's safe now. That's what matters." Cyrus approached, his demo gear packed away. "Perimeter's clear, boss. All charges recovered and accounted for. Though we might want to warn any future farm buyers about surprise renovations to the landscape." Wade smiled. "Not selling. Ever. This land's worth fighting for." Agent Martinez was coordinating with her tactical teams, establishing a secure cordon around the property. "Washington's very interested in this operation," she told Wade. "El Fantasma's capture is going to disrupt cartel operations across 3 states. They'll want details. They'll get what they need to know," Wade replied, "nothing more." The morning progressed as federal agencies processed the scene. Evidence teams documented the sophisticated defenses that had turned a simple farm into a death trap for cartel forces. Each discovery added to their growing appreciation of just how thoroughly El Fantasma's forces had been outmatched. "Found their operations center," Zane reported, examining captured equipment. "High-end stuff. Satellite communications, drone, control, advanced encryption. They came prepared for a major campaign and walked into a nightmare," Knox added from his position. Wade watched El Fantasma being led to an armored transport vehicle. The cartel leader caught his eye and nodded slightly, professional acknowledging professional. Then he was gone, headed for a supermax facility where he'd have plenty of time to reflect on the night's lessons. Sarah approached again, this time with purpose. "The valley's talking, Wade. Everyone's wondering what happened here. What do we tell them?" Wade considered this as Nash joined them, his medical kit finally packed away. The team gathered around, waiting for his decision. They'd won the battle, but managing the aftermath would require its own kind of tactical thinking. "We tell them the truth," Wade said finally. "Just not all of it. Sometimes the best stories are the ones left partly untold." A week after the battle, Ironwood Valley began showing subtle signs of change. The Henderson place, previously occupied by cartel forces, was being surveyed by Knox, his trained eyes seeing more than just abandoned buildings. Wade watched his old friend walking the property, marking sightlines and defensive positions with the same precision he'd once used in combat zones. Ridge overlooks 3 major access roads, Knox reported later that evening in Wade's rebuilt barn. Clear views for 2 miles in every direction. Previous owners had to leave in a hurry. Left file cabinets full of cartel documentation. Cyrus looked up from his blueprints of the valley. County auctions next week. Most of these properties will go cheap. Cartel's shell companies are desperate to unload them. Amazing what happens when criminals lose their nerve, Wade observed, studying the valley map they'd spread across his workbench. Red marks indicated former cartel properties, each one strategically valuable. Sarah Bennett's truck appeared on the security cameras, approaching Wade's farm. They'd known this conversation was coming. She was too smart to keep buying the Lucky Farmer story forever. Maintain cover, Wade ordered. His team dispersed smoothly, becoming simple farmhands and visiting friends as Sarah pulled up. Still, fixing bullet holes, she called out, climbing down from her truck. Her eyes took in the repairs, noting the professional quality of the work. Most of them, Wade replied. Coffee's fresh if you want some. Inside, Sarah studied Wade's face carefully. Town meeting yesterday was interesting. Lots of properties coming up for auction. Some people are nervous about who might buy them. Heard. Your brother's department cleared them all, Wade said, pouring coffee. No more cartel presence. That's not what worries them. Sarah leaned forward. Wade, I need to know what really happened here that night. And don't tell me it was just lucky shooting, Wade considered his response. Sarah had proven trustworthy, and in a small community, some truths couldn't stay hidden forever. What do you think happened? I think, she said slowly, that the cartel didn't just run into a farmer. I think they ran into someone who knew exactly how to fight them, someone with training, experience. Through his window, Wade watched Knox and Cyrus discussing property lines, their movements still carrying the unconscious precision of trained operators. Sometimes people aren't what they seem, sometimes that's a good thing. The others? Sarah nodded toward the men outside. They're not just friends helping with repairs, are they? Does it matter? Sarah's expression softened. The valley is changing, Wade. People feel safer, like something's watching over them, protecting them. Good land's worth protecting. A helicopter passed overhead, National Guard running surveillance on cartel movement near the Canadian border, but Wade knew they were really checking on something else. After the battle, certain agencies had taken a renewed interest in the valley's security. Martinez stopped by the diner yesterday, Sarah mentioned casually. That FBI agent. She was asking questions about you, about your background. Agent Martinez is good at her job, Wade acknowledged. She knows some stories are better left uninvestigated. Nash's truck pulled up, loaded with medical supplies. His cover as the valley's new doctor was already established. The old clinic needed someone younger, and his combat medical experience translated well to rural healthcare. More new people moving in, Sarah noted. That retired Army sniper bought the Wilson place. Combat medic taking over Doc Peterson's clinic. Even heard rumors about a security consultant looking at the old radio station. Wade kept his expression neutral, but inwardly he smiled. His team was integrating perfectly, establishing their roles while maintaining tactical positions throughout the valley. Change isn't always bad, he said finally. Sometimes it's exactly what a place needs. Sarah studied him for a long moment. The cartel wasn't your first fight, was it? Any of you? Let's just say we've had practice. A truck appeared on the road, Zane returning from installing communications equipment across the valley. In reality, he was creating a surveillance network that would make future threats think twice about moving in. You're building something here, Sarah realized. Not just repairing damage, you're turning the whole valley into a community. One that can protect itself, Wade finished. The way you protected it that night. Sarah nodded slowly, understanding. dawning in her eyes. That's why you're letting people figure it out gradually. The rumors, the speculation, it's all part of it, isn't it? Smart woman, Wade smiled. Amazing how criminals avoid places where they might find more than they bargain for. 2 weeks after the battle, Knox stood at his newly acquired property, the former Wilson Place, watching locals arrive for what they thought was just a shooting club meeting. The converted barn had become a state-of-the-art training facility, though most wouldn't recognize it as such. Remember, Knox addressed the gathered farmers and ranchers. Accuracy before speed. Combat shooting's different from hunting. You need to be prepared for targets that shoot back, Wade observed from the sidelines, noting how naturally Knox slipped. Advanced tactical training into basic shooting lessons. These weren't soldiers they were training. They were community members learning to protect themselves. But the principles remained the same. Your property is your responsibility, Knox continued. Knowing how to defend it isn't just about guns. It's about awareness, observation, understanding your terrain. Sarah Bennett was among the students, her natural aptitude showing. She'd already spotted 3 of the hidden observation posts Wade's team had established around the valley. More. Importantly, she'd kept that knowledge to herself. Across the valley, Nash's clinic had become operational, his combat medical experience translating perfectly to rural healthcare. But he was doing more than just treating patients. Each visitor was carefully evaluated not just for medical issues, but for their potential as either ally or threat. Interesting morning, Nash reported later at Wade's farm. Had a visitor. Claimed to be a traveling salesman, but his hands told a different story. Calluses consistent with weapons training. Cartel scout? Wade asked, checking security feeds. Probably. Gave him something to help with his headache. Minor sedative. Zane's tracking his movements now. Let's see where he reports back to. Cyrus emerged from his workshop, where he'd been modifying farming equipment. To most eyes, they looked like normal tractors and harvesters. Few would notice the reinforced frames, the bulletproof glass, the hidden compartments. Finished the modifications on the Bennett place, Cyrus reported. Sarah's barn could withstand a direct mortar hit now, not that anyone would notice without looking real close. The local sheriff had been asking questions, nothing aggressive, just curious about all the new people moving in. Let him be curious, Wade advised. Better he thinks he's uncovering things on his own, makes him feel involved. A truck approached. Bill Henderson, one of the local ranchers, looking troubled. Wade recognized the expression. More people were starting to notice. Changes in the valley, trying to make sense of them. Wade, Henderson called out, climbing down from his truck. Got a minute? Something happened last night that... Well, it's strange. Wade led him to the porch where Atlas lay, alert but relaxed. What's on your mind? Had some visitors after dark. 3 vehicles, didn't recognize them. They stopped at my gate, looked like they were about to cause trouble. Henderson paused, collecting his thoughts. Then the strangest thing happened. Got a call from Knox up at the old Wilson place, said he was doing some night shooting practice. Might get noisy. Next thing I know, shots ring out from somewhere in the hills. Visitors couldn't leave fast enough. Wade kept his expression neutral, but he knew exactly what had happened. Knox had been on overwatch as usual. The visitors had likely been cartel scouts testing the valley's new defenses. Lot of strange things happening lately, Henderson continued. New people moving in, all of them military types. Security cameras going up on properties. Even got folks talking about forming a community watch program. Times are changing, Wade observed. After what happened with the cartel, people are being more careful. Henderson was sharper than most gave him credit for. Sarah Bennett says you're the one we should thank. Says what you did that night, standing up to the cartel. It changed. To things. Sarah talks too much. Sarah's usually right. Henderson straightened up. Listen, some of us have been talking. We want to help. Whatever you and your friends are doing to protect this valley, we want to be part of it. Wade studied the rancher carefully. Henderson had fought in Vietnam, though he rarely spoke of it. He'd know enough to recognize a military operation when he saw one. Might be we could use some extra eyes and ears, Wade acknowledged. People who know the land, know what belongs and what doesn't. Already got a network started, Henderson revealed. Ranchers, farmers, even some of the town folks. We notice things, been keeping track of strangers passing through. Unusual activity. Figure that might be useful to whoever might need to know. A month after the battle, Wade stood on his porch, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in shades of gold and purple. His farm showed no signs of the fierce combat that had raged across its grounds. The bullet holes were patched, the burns covered, the landscape restored, but the valley would never be the same. Movement at the north checkpoint, Zane's voice came through his earpiece. Tourist vehicles, clean IDs. Knox is monitoring. The valley's transformation had been subtle, but complete. Every entrance now had hidden observation posts. Every road could be monitored or blocked if needed. But to casual observers, it just looked like peaceful farmland. Sarah pulled up in her truck, now equipped with concealed armor and reinforced running gear. Just another of Cyrus's special modifications that were becoming common in the valley. "You should see the news from down south," she said, joining Wade on the porch. 3 more cartels have pulled back operations from neighboring counties. Seems nobody wants to risk running into the ghosts of Montana. Wade smiled. Sometimes reputation was better than force. How's the community watch program coming along? Training's going well, though I notice our basic security courses seem awfully similar to military counter-surveillance techniques. She gave him a knowing look. Knox is a good teacher. Man knows his stuff, Wade replied mildly. Nash's voice came over the radio. Clinic's clear. That DEA agent finished his inspection. Think we convinced him we're just a rural medical center with unusually good emergency response protocols. The official story had held. As far as the world was concerned, the cartel's defeat was due to a combination of local law enforcement, FBI intervention, and bad luck. Only a select few knew the truth, that 5 old soldiers had transformed an entire valley into an impregnable fortress. Henderson's boy spotted another scout car yesterday, Sarah mentioned, called it in to Knox. 2 warning shots later, they decided our valley wasn't worth investigating. The community network was proving more effective than any high-tech security system. Farmers, ranchers, shop owners, everyone had become part of the valley's defense. They didn't need to know the full truth. They just knew their home was worth protecting. Cyrus's truck pulled up, loaded with construction materials. Finishing the renovations on the Miller place, he reported. Added some structural reinforcement that should handle anything short of an artillery strike. How's their training coming along? Wade asked. Whole families learning fast. Even the teenagers are starting to spot surveillance patterns. Good instincts. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the valley. In the distance, Wade could see Knox's students practicing at the range, learning skills they hopefully would never need to use. But if trouble came again, it would find more than just 5 Delta operators waiting. You've built something special. Here, Sarah said quietly. Not just defenses. You've given people back their sense of security, their pride in protecting their home. We just showed them what they could do, Wade replied. The rest was already in them. Zane emerged from his communication center with a report. Intercepted some cartel chatter. They're spreading stories about this valley, calling it El Valle de los Fantasmas, Valley of Ghosts. Say it's protected by spirits that hunt cartel members. Let them believe in ghosts, Wade said. The reality's more effective. Atlas raised his head, ears perking at a distant sound. Through their security network, they watched a convoy of suspicious vehicles approach the valley's edge. Pause. Then turn around. The cartel's scouts had learned their lesson. Some places weren't worth the risk. Wade looked at his assembled team. These men who'd answered his call without hesitation. They weren't young soldiers anymore, but age had brought something better. Wisdom, patience, the knowledge of how to fight smarter instead of harder. "Think they'll try again?" Sarah asked. "Someone might," Wade acknowledged. "But they'll find more than they bargained for. Some valleys are protected by more than just mountains." The Montana night settled over them, peaceful and secure. In homes across the valley, people slept safely, many never knowing about the network of warriors and citizens that kept watch. And that was exactly how it should be. The cartels had wanted to take this land by force. Instead, they'd sparked something unprecedented, a community that had learned to defend itself, led by old soldiers who had found a new way to serve, not with violence, but with vigilance, not through fear, but through preparation. Wade scratched Atlas behind the ears, watching the stars emerge above his transformed valley. Some fights were worth more than others. This one had given an entire community back its soul.